What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Roll Tide Cafe, a part of the Bama Standard Network. On here with us today, obviously, is Justin Riley, co-owner of the Bama Standard Network. Obviously, appreciating you getting on here with me and talking about, well, a very controversial issue. Nick Sheridan, the noise. How much noise have you heard on Twitter about the fans, previous players, all sorts of people talking about Nick Sheridan and whether or not he should stay at Alabama, be demoted, or fired?
That's all fans are talking about. And the thing is, it's been constant throughout the season, but after the debacle that was the ReliaQuest Bowl, the sounds of the disgruntled fans got just overpowering and probably could be heard across multiple continents. And then earlier today, we found out that Colin Hitchler is dismissed, which is odd because as we know, the defensive side of the football is probably one of the most improved parts of Alabama and something Alabama fans can hang their hats on. Not only the defense, but the secondary. That group was absolutely phenomenal. Slow start. They had young faces in there trying to learn their way, and they started to figure it out. Crazy thing is, Keon Sabb goes out after a hot start. Bray Hubbard comes in, the defense starts to make everything work. It's like he was the missing piece in that machine that made things go, and elevation from there begin to be presented before us. And now Colin Hitchler is surprisingly let go. Mystery. And fans took notice of that. And the first thing that was out of their mouth essentially was, why have we not seen any offensive changes? Why was Sheridan not let go, but a defensive coach was let go? It makes no sense. And Johnathan, you spoke about it earlier in the video we released. The defense only gave up 17.9 points per game. That's pretty good. Did they have their struggles this year? They did. But sometimes you got to take your bumps before you can stand on your own 2 feet and move forward. And we did. We learned from our mistakes. We grew from it. We matured. And the defense did their thing. And matter of fact, if it was not for the defense, we would not have been in a lot of the games we were in. Defense gave Alabama every opportunity possible to win the ReliaQuest Bowl, but that did not happen. But here we are. We're talking about Nick Sheridan. Fans want him gone. They are looking purely at the surface level of all this and not looking at anything beyond that. I think there's layers to this. To me, I feel like that we didn't get to see what the Alabama offense could truly look like because essentially it was handcuffed, right? We had a quarterback who had glaring deficiencies, and there's not a whole lot you can do because of those deficiencies. Jalen Milroe had a hard time hitting the basic of throws, the out routes, the screens, the slants, anything over the middle just wasn't happening. Couldn't shift protections. And also, as we discovered, he was tipping off the defense because of his foot placement. That's something that was a pattern and easy to figure out. That's one of the things about Jalen Milroe was he had tendencies that were very easy to figure out. And once you knew what they were, not hard to stop that offense. But now he's gone. And I feel that Alabama fans need to take a look at what the offense can be now that I don't know if you want to call it distraction, hindrance may be the better word, is gone. And inserting it into his spot as a quarterback, whether it's Keelan Russell, Ty Simpson, or Austin Mack, who can see receivers, who can go through his progressions, who can adjust the protections, and do a lot of the things that Jalen Milroe can't. And all of a sudden, this offense takes a whole different look.
Yeah, so I'm going to point out the obvious fan things, right? Like you were there with a lot of players and stuff like that. So I'm going to come from the perspective of a fan on the outside on TV watching these games right? So we're going to start off with some of the most obvious. Bad play calling. Nick Sheridan was the definition, if I look it up on Wikipedia, of bad play calling. I think most fans would agree with that. One of the most frustrating things for me, lack of in-game adjustments. We kept calling plays that didn't work over and over and over and thought it was just magically supposed to start working. I know people are going to say you're going to blame Kalen DeBoer, and I do. Don't get me wrong. Kalen DeBoer is responsible for this as well, because ultimately this is Kalen DeBoer's offense, right? That's been taught to Nick Sheridan, right? All the way back to Indiana, going over to Washington, you know what I mean? So tight ends coach from there. And I get it, Ryan Grubb is not there, but he also taught Grubbs that offense as well. So it's not like Grubbs was the sole handler of this offense to Alabama and he left and took the offense with him. That was not the case. Not willing to look at other quarterbacks when you're struggling mightily. ReliaQuest Bowl is a perfect example. Ty Simpson didn't see the field. Austin Mack didn't see the field. Earlier in the season, Dylan Lonergan got basically no chances, right? So nobody saw the field except Jalen Milroe. It was his show to figure out. Jalen Milroe's progression, I guess you could say, or lack of efficiency, fell off a cliff after the Georgia game. Most people will want to point to the LSU game and we'll say, well, look at what he did against LSU. You're absolutely right. He out-athleted LSU is exactly what he did, right? The most basic LSU fans, and then if you go into YouTube, Power Carter, amazing show to watch, amazing YouTube channel to go to, for LSU, breaks it down in a film study. We didn't do anything amazing other than have Jalen Milroe's feet and speed. Their secondary could not keep up with Jalen Milroe. Bad angles hindered the safeties, and the corners just couldn't keep up. They were too slow, right? Ryan Williams became a superstar in a matter of 5 weeks, then became non-existent for the rest of the season.
Right.
Didn't hear from him again, right? Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, and others, where were they? I mean, we had other receivers. Jeremy Bernard had flashes, right, of games where he would, and I believe in the ReliaQuest Bowl, he had like 80 yards. Like, he had flashes, definitely. Justice Haynes and Jam Miller, two outstanding running backs. Guys, we have a backfield with Richard Young, Riley. Like, there's studs in the backfield. Not existent, not utilized. You have to blame Kalen DeBoer. You have to blame Nick Sheridan. You have to blame Jamarcus Shepard. You have to blame this entire staff, and you have to blame the deficiencies that were obviously there also from some of the players. I won't just say Jalen Milroe, Elijah Pritchett, right? Looking forward to when he was in there. Caden Proctor, the last 3 games of the season, struggled at left tackle. Jaden Roberts struggled at times. Everybody had their fair share of struggles. We know that. But some were just more glaring and more deficient than others. Plain and simple. It was the play calling from the staff, and it was clearly Jalen Milroe. In my opinion, there is no arguing that. You can sit there and try to cupcake, put sugar on it, all you want. Whatever BS you want to do with it. It is what it is, right? You can't overthrow 3-yard flat routes. Running back 3 yards away and you're going to overthrow them. You can't do you can't miss the basics and then expect to win big games. Plain and simple. And then I'm going to bring up one more point to you, and I'm going to kick it over to you to get your opinion on this.
Okay.
Me and you discussed this beforehand, right before we get on here. And I said things are going to get a lot more complicated with coaches. And the reason why it's going to get a lot more complicated is for reasons that people aren't yet talking about, at least from what I've seen. And that's the buyouts are no longer going to be there. Because all that buyout money from the boosters and from the university is going where, Justin? It's going to
the players,
players.
Dudes, the purchasing.
So guess what? The days of just buying out your assistants, your offense coordinators, your defense coordinators, your coaches, it's gone. You're stuck with them. When you sign a 5-year, $70 million contract and $50 million is guaranteed, whatever that may look like, guess what? You have a coach for 5 years, you're paying him $70 million and $50 million is guaranteed. Plain and simple. I don't know any other way around it unless you're willing to sacrifice the players for the coaches. So one's got to be sacrificed over the other if you can't find this perfect balance and have an outstanding AD with an outstanding general manager, which Alabama does with Courtney Morgan. That's why they're so important in these programs. So with all that being said, I'm going to kick it back over to you before I even get on more of a rant here.
You're talking about things that have not yet surfaced that fans need to know about and take into consideration because that is a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
In terms of what you're saying regarding the backs, I agree. They were underutilized, but I can't help but think that Nick Sheridan, who's made it to this point, and his logical mind would purposely not get those elite backs involved. I have to ask the question, were carries taken away from the running backs by Jalen Milroe? It looked to me at times that if the ball would have been put into the stomach of Jam or Justice, there was nothing but green ahead of them. But instead, Milroe took it himself and proceeded to do his own thing, much to his and the offense's detriment. So I have to ask, and I'm not trying to accuse him of anything, but it's there. I can't ignore it. I just like again in my mind, it can't be wrapped around a coordinator who would willingly make his elite backs obsolete. It doesn't make sense. And then I have to ask the question: if the wrong calls are being made, then why are you as the leader of that offense, Jalen Milroe, not making the audibles? If you see things in front of you that are not going to work, it's not going to be a fit for that play and that drive to be successful. That's another thing that he struggled with, just making adjustments, calling the audibles. It's like he was bound to determine to sink with the ship regardless of what the outcome was. No, I'm not taking the full blame off of Nick Sheridan because he made some blunders. And if you want to be honest, we can go back to his time with Kalen DeBoer previously where he was demoted in season. I would hope from that point he has matured to where we wouldn't be facing that again. But nothing was perfect in any aspect of this offense. But again, I think the offense was handcuffed. Now, I want to say to the fans, I understand your frustration first and foremost. Don't get me wrong. But I think that Nick Sheridan maybe should get a probationary period or season to prove that maybe he is the guy for the job because, as I mentioned earlier, the offense takes on a completely different appearance now that there will be a quarterback who can go through all of his progressions, who can make those changes that are necessary, and who can be that alpha that can can guide that offense. We're in a very curious spot as Bama fans because up until recent years, offense has not been an issue for us. We were heavily spoiled by Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, and then Bryce Young. For everything to completely go the opposite direction and look like when it comes to offense, we forgot how to football.
It's such a weird transition. And I want to answer your questions. I want to answer the second one first. Jalen Milroe, here's the thing. Yeah, I'm just going to say it, and I get there's going to be backlash for this, and it is what it is at this point. He missed wide open receivers all season. But more importantly, the ones he didn't see streaking wide open down the field is the problem, right? So
Right.
I get it. You're not an outstanding passer. As an Alabama fan, as a football fan, I can live with that and not get heated. As a fan, we get emotional. We're not the ones playing. We're not the ones devoting time. I know it's more difficult than I could ever do. But I've witnessed what it takes, right? Watching it on TV for these players to be successful. And to watch it be a detriment to the team of you're not just overthrowing players, you're just not seeing the field. So as a fan, I'm asking the question, or really I'm not asking the question, I'm probably thinking you just don't have the capability of doing the job. You don't have the capability of going through the progressions to see the wide open receivers. You don't have the ability to throw receivers open. You just throw to open receivers. There's a difference of anticipatory throwing and a receiver being wide open for a touchdown. right? That's already open. So you need to ask those questions as fans, because that's what makes this so great and interesting. And I know a lot of people are going to say you're bashing Jalen and all this stuff. Call it what you want. I'm just giving my input in an opinion. Does it matter? No, absolutely not. Right? Do you think these guys are going to care what I think? Absolutely not. But there's nothing saying I can't think that. There's nothing saying I can't, have this way of thinking. And as far as back to your first one, with Nick Sheridan, there's no excuse for it, right? So to even ask a question on top of your question, is it the fact that Nick Sheridan, is it the fact that maybe Kalen DeBoer not having the capabilities and this many superstars on a team, that Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, you have the Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, right? Ryan Williams, CJ Dupree. You have an outstanding offensive line. You're talking about Jaden Roberts, Caden Proctor, Brailsford, right? So you have Booker. You have, in my opinion, an outstanding O-line. But because you felt handcuffed on your previous teams that weren't loaded like this, are you using that same mindset here at Alabama and just not using them? Is that what we're witnessing? I don't know. But either way, I'm done ranting about Jalen Milroe. I've harped on him enough, right? So I've harped on Nick Sheridan all season. You know this. Me and you have gone back and forth all year about these guys.
Yeah.
We shredded Kane Womack at the beginning of the season, and now we're praising the guy. We're gonna give kudos to where it's deserved, right? There's no doubt about that. But you best believe I'm not going to sugarcoat and hold my tongue, right, when I see obvious deficiencies that just aren't being paid attention to. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
To your point about having Jalen Milroe pulled during the ReliaQuest Bowl, and I argued this as well. We did a video about it, and I was on a TikTok live not too long after we did that, and AJ McCarron jumped in, and he stopped me in the middle of my point, feeling that since it was a bowl game, at this point there's nothing to lose. You need to start preparing for next year, getting Ty Simpson the valuable reps, and regardless of what happened, it would be a positive experience that he can grow from leading into next season. And AJ said, no, at that point in the bowl game, you don't pull your starter. If you were going to make a change, it should have been made during the season. So then we got to look at it, Nick Sheridan. We got to look at Kalen DeBoer in that respect. What kept you from pulling the trigger when things were going tragically, destructively south? What kept ultimately, what is the why behind you not making the decision that ultimately could have projected your team to a better position than where they're at right now? Is there more behind the scenes than what we see? Because listen, there are layers to everything. What we see on the surface isn't exactly what the true story is. And maybe we can get into that at a later date. But that's the ultimate question. What is the why behind not pulling him? I get it. There are ripple effects. You could have mutiny. You could have players going on strike because that's their guy. And we're not going to play for you if you're not going to play our guy. Not saying that's that case, but it's something that you can look at. I've seen it before. It happened when I was there. But
yeah,
you got to look at the ripple effects of everything you do.
You're right. But at the end of the day, you're the coach.
You are.
And you got to have the balls to do it.
Line in the sand. You got to draw it. And
exactly
whatever the effects are, then you live with those effects. But the ones who are bought into what you're trying to sell them, they're going to respect you for it, and they're going to play hard for you.
Exactly.
And, yeah, even if you have to wait until next year to see the fruit of that.
No, I agree 100%. All right. Well, I've ranted enough. I've talked enough. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get off here?
Honestly, about this subject, not at all. But I feel like based on what we've seen so far, we'll have plenty of topics to address here in the offseason. That's the thing about Alabama football. The offseason is truly never boring. There's always something going on to be talking about. And, folks, I'm just going to let you know there is more to come. Get ready.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching the video. If you already, make sure to like, share, and subscribe below. Make sure to check out all the Bama Standard live streams, videos. There's plenty of stuff on here. Obviously, you can see a couple above my head, and all of them will be listed in the description as well. Other than that, everybody have a good day. Welcome to the shit show. Like you said, it's going to be a long off season. And as always, roll tide.
Roll Tide.